Welcome to my presentation on Federico Lorca's Poet in New York. On to the context plus arguments. In 1936, Lorca left the manuscript of Poet in New York with his publisher and planned to return soon. But he was murdered shortly afterwards by fascist forces during the Spanish Civil War. The collection was published posthumously. The poems were unexpected because they did not celebrate New York or highlight its Spanish-speaking cultural life. Instead, Lorca portrayed New York as alien, hostile, and emotionally overwhelming. He arrived already struggling with personal identity issues and emotional instability, and his stay also coincided with major historical events such as the Wall Street crash of 1929, the Great Depression, and the ongoing racial oppression and segregation in Harlem. So these experiences deeply shape the tone and themes of the poem, and his work reflects alienation, criticism of capitalism, and empathy for oppressed communities. So today, I picked out 3 poems in the work, which is Vuelta de Paseo, La Aurora, and LA de Harlem, to serve as the main examples of these themes. Okay, so on the first poem, Vuelta de Paseo, so Lorca expresses the shock and emotional confusion he felt when first arriving in New York. The repeated phrases, asesinado por el cielo, conveys a sense of being overwhelmed and threatened even by the environment itself. The poem's disturbing imagery of broken animals and silent trees reflects how New York felt unnatural, harsh, and emotionally suffocating to him. Lorca's emotional instability and personal identity struggles intensifies this sense of alienation. He intentionally leaves out the vibrant Spanish-speaking community in New York, choosing instead to present himself as isolated to emphasize the city's overwhelming and draining effect on him. Onto La Aurora, Lorca uses surreal and unsettling imagery to portray New York's dawn as dark, polluted, and emotionally heavy rather than hopeful. He suggests that every new day in the city feels meaningless because the city is built on corruption and moral decay. The image of coins swarming and consuming abandoned children symbolizes how capitalism treats people as disposables. Lorca criticized how the pursuit of profit replaces human care, dignity, and emotional connection. This critique reflects the real suffering caused by the Great Depression, which left millions struggling for survival. Moving on to LA de Harlem. So in this poem, Lorca shifts his focus toward the African-American community of Harlem, showing both its cultural power and the suffering imposed on it by the systematic racism. So there's an imagery of an African-American king being trapped in the uniform of a doorman, which symbolizes a man who should possess dignity and power, but is instead confined and devalued by racial oppression. The repeated lament of a Harlem, a Harlem, a Harlem echoes a collective cry of pain, highlighting the emotional and physical struggles of the community. Lorca uses violent and anguished imagery to show how racism suppresses identity, forcing anger and strength into helplessness and grief. Through this poem, Lorca uses surreal language to expose injustice in Harlem rather than ignore it. Alright, so onto conclusion and final thoughts. Lorca's time in New York deeply changed the way he understood modern society and the people living within it. His poems show not only what he observed in the city, but how those experiences made him feel and think on a personal level. New York's overwhelming environment, plus the events like the Great Depression and racial injustices, revealed social issues such as capitalism's dehumanizing effects and systematic racism. Lorca chose to confront and critique these issues in his poetry rather than ignore them. Even after his death, his poems continue to remind readers that beneath the image of a modern, thriving city, there are real lives and struggles that deserve to be acknowledged and understood. Thank you for watching.